firstly, before I kind of get into what you've achieved, can you kind of take me back to that point where where you're working 9 to 5 job, side hustle with coaching? You're actually, you had, I think in the message, like 38, 40 clients. So you actually had a decent size. Like to be honest, a lot of people who do just one-to-one coaching may not even have that yet.
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of take me back to there. Maybe even if you can remember the moment of like reaching out to me in terms of how you're feeling with yourself, your business, and what kind of like led to wanting to do it.
Yeah. So I reflect on our conversations so much because I was at a point where I was working in like a senior corporate position. I'd worked 10 plus years to kind of climb the corporate ladder, and I was really happy in my corporate career and I was doing really well. And Body by Bell was always like a side hustle, passion project, and it was always kind of supposed to be that way. And yeah, I just remember thinking, this was like April last year, I just remember thinking, this can't be like my life forever, you know, commuting 2 hours a day, every single day, you know, grafting my arse off to, you know, get small incremental pay rises every single year. And at that point I had, I think it was like 30 to 40 clients. I think recurring rev was around about 2.5, 3K. And I just remember thinking, if I'm doing this part-time and I'm doing this at like the weekends, I've never sent a DM in my life, I've never thought about my content or my marketing before, then I kind of started to realise there's probably some potential here. And that's when I started looking into business mentors. And I'd looked into loads of different options, and you know, you were always the one that I was kind of gravitating back towards. So I think you DM'd me. I think I think I liked one of your posts, and then you DM'd me, and then we just had a conversation. Obviously, you were very transparent about the prices, and I knew I needed help. And then everything happened from there. Yeah,
mad. Because even just on from you signing up, the next DM interaction we had was I shared a story, which was a screenshot of your win, not mentioning you. It was essentially, I think a few days in, you got like your first kind of high ticket, paid in full sale.
Yeah.
So was it like, did you almost feel there was like an immediate, because I that's something that's like really important for me when someone puts their trust into me. I kind of want to repay that as quick as I can in terms of a feeling of maybe like confidence and belief in yourself.
Yeah.
Do you remember that at all?
It was crazy because obviously when you operate just with recurring and you don't even, I never even thought, I didn't even know pay in full was a thing, to be honest with you. So that was kind of, that was huge. I remember that so vividly. I was like, oh my God, what the hell? And then I realized how, because when I went onto your page, I think what gave me faith was like, you had so much like social proof already. You had so many coaches who had achieved like big numbers. But I always thought like the 20K months, 25K months, like I didn't believe it. Do you know what I mean? I just didn't believe it. And then I remember when I got that first paid in full, I was like, I get it now. But it was also, you know, I had to change my entire approach, sales approach. And that was something that obviously we worked together quite a lot, you know, especially at the start to kind of get that right, basically.
What would you say? So you were someone, as you said, who never sent a DM, never put much time into your content, but you got to a place of like 30, 40 clients.
Yeah.
Is there anything specific you feel kind of like led you to that point in terms of like why people were attracted to want to work with you? Is there anything specific you could tie that down to?
I think there's probably a couple of things. Firstly, I think like I am genuinely so passionate about it. Like, you know, I never started coaching for the money or even a career, to be honest with you. I did it because I got myself out of a really tough point in my life. You know, I was overweight, I was really unhealthy, depressed. And so my passions kind of go really, really deep in that sense. So I think people recognize that. You know, a lot of the clients at the start, they were people that I knew from school, you know, and they'd seen me transform my life. So, you know, they found me really relatable. And then obviously the referrals started coming in off the back of that. But I think the second thing is like, and you know this, like my service has always been like my number one priority. Like I've never allowed anything else to like sacrifice that. And I'll always do whatever it takes, you know, to make sure that the clients are getting the results and they're happy. And if that means kind of, you know, sacrificing myself temporarily, then I'd always do that. So I think the service has always come from, you know, a really good place, and it will continue that way as well.
Yeah, love that. And where do you think that comes from for you in terms of like caring so much? Obviously, I know it comes back from your past and wanting to help people in a similar way, but like, is there any kind of like common trends you can see through your life or your career where you caring so much about the customer journey and the service, even to a point too much where I know from having conversations to you could beat yourself up for something that's not even like your fault, because like when in any coaching mentoring space there will be a varied amount of like results you get because of how people act. But like, is there anything specific when I say that where you're like, I think it comes from here in me? Or
I think the first thing is that like I've worked with good coaches and I've worked with bad coaches as well. And, you know, in my, you know, I've been coached for like 7 years of my life now. And I think obviously the results come from the good coaches, the ones that care. And, you know, I've experienced myself where I've invested a lot of money and, you know, the coach hasn't delivered for me. And that's sad. Like, you know, and I would never want anyone who's invested in Body by Bell to feel that way. So I think firstly, just that. I think secondly, working in the corporate world, working in business for years before I took Body by Bell full time, like, you know, reputation is everything, and that's important when it comes to business. So I think I've always experienced, like, you know, in the corporate world, I always wanted to be, you know, the best. I always wanted to deliver the best service for, you know, people internally and externally. And I think, I think that's just carried me through my corporate career and then through to Body by Bell, you know, pretty seamlessly. Yeah.
I think as well, like something that I always say for myself when it comes to service reputation, it's like you can build a new business, you can't build a new reputation. And I think as well, I know we've had this discussion. It's like when you get to a level of success really only comes down to, okay, yes, maybe the amount of money you have, the size business you built, but without all the other things of actually being proud of, you know, the people you've helped, actually people being happy for you. Because if you got to the top and you've given kind of like a shitty service, you're like, hey, you're there, but you don't really have the people to celebrate it with. No one really thinks you've done things the right way. So it's like, if you can separate yourself and get to the top, which is hard to do in itself, but then doing so by actually being a good coach, a decent person, decent boss for your staff, you know, it makes the process so much better.
Yeah, I think it's funny because obviously we've reached huge financial milestones, but it's always made me happier and kind of made me feel more alive when we've achieved an amazing result, or we get, you know, a message from a client who, you know, we've changed their life. Like that for me is like, that makes me cry genuinely. Whereas, you know, hitting a financial milestone, amazing. It helps build a great life, you know, for me and my family, but nothing feels as good as that feedback. And, you know, I think that's when you know that you're doing it for the right reasons. And I think the success will come when you do it, you know, with the right reasons.
Interesting question for you. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but when we are focusing on growing and scaling, is there anything you have to maybe, because I've definitely been there, you almost have to check yourself and like kind of remember, because sometimes we can beat ourselves up just by the financial number if we're not like hitting a certain target. But if we take it back to like, okay, are we delivering the service we want, impacting lives, and those things, like don't leave revenue be what kind of underpins your value or your happiness. Like have you found you had to, with the rapid success you've had and the rapid growth you've had in your business, have you almost had to be like, okay, I need to remember also what the coaching actually is doing for people?
100%. I think it's really hard being in, as amazing as like the online coaching world is, I think it's a hard space to be in as well, because you're constantly faced with, you know, numbers everywhere. Do you know what I mean? Like this person's doing this revenue, this person's doing this revenue, this person's reached this milestone. And I think that can be difficult, because when you're competitive and you want to be the best, and that is important to you, I think it can be quite hard, because you can start questioning yourself, even though, oh my God, if I reflected on me in April last year, and if you said to me I would be where I am now, I'd be like, what? Like, I wouldn't even believe it. Do you know what I mean? Whereas now I'm like, you know, more. that's important. I think it's important to be driven in that way for sure. And that's helped me constantly drive forward when I've been, going through a tougher time, or whether it's been, I've had like a mental block or whatever it might be. But at the same time, it always comes back down to when I like ground myself and I remember what, the reasons why I started it in the first place, and the reasons why I still do what I do, and, the joy that I get when, we see someone with, who's had great success on the program. I think when you bring it back down to that, suddenly you feel good again, So, but I think it is important to remember that stuff as well. Yeah.
And did you have a tipping point from when you started working together? You started really doing well with the coaching in terms of, like, I know the initial goal was like, okay, I wanted to match what I'm earning in my corporate job, which I think we did quite quickly. But then you were still at a point like, because then it comes into like, okay, yeah, I've done that, but that's not...
it's never enough.
Well, one, it's never enough, and two, it's not secure.
No.
So you're like, okay, yeah, I've matched it, but with my corporate, it's guaranteed every month. This could all fall underneath me. So what was kind of like probably the tipping point, or if you remember a moment, maybe been a discussion with me with one of your family where like, I think I'm ready to go fully all in on that. Is there anything that comes to mind? I think,
I remember I wanted to match my corporate salary. And I thought I'd be sweet at that point. I wanted to kind of see that 3-month trend, and remember I had a 3-month notice as well. So that time was really difficult because the business was growing so quickly. I think we doubled revenue in the first month. The second month was like we hit over 10K. Like it was crazy growth within the first 3 months. But I remember thinking, nah, like there's no like. I just know that it would never fail. Like when I got to that point where I was like, I can see the trend for the 3 months, and I knew what I was capable of, with your support. I think you've got to back yourself. Yeah. So that's when I kind of went in and handed my notice in, and then I had another 3 months to work alongside, which was tricky.
It's funny because you obviously, we got to the point of like growing like literally every single month, and then you'd hit like a huge month, let's say like 15K, and you're like, hey, I've handed in my notice, still have like 2-3 months to go, but like I've done 15K, like if I could just kind of keep this consistent, I'm happy, because I have to be realistic of actually how many people I can take on, how many sales calls I can do. Like I'm literally working full time, and I'm like, I agree. I was like we're probably like, this is like, if we can maintain this even like a few K less, like we're doing really good.
Yeah.
And then you'd be like, oh, I'm going to beat the previous month, and I'm like, how are you continually just improving it?
I remember getting on the calls with you, and I had no time to reflect. By the way, I'd come onto the call with you, be like, "How are you?" I'm like, I haven't slept in 7 days, and every month at the end of the month, I'd be like, I have no idea how that happened. And I think the one thing that was really cool as well is like when we got into the renewal stage as well with the paid in fulls, and obviously because our clients were really enjoying the process and enjoying the service, we hit that renewal point. So actually I got to a point where I didn't have to grow in terms of bring on more clients. It was about kind of, nurturing our current kind of client base as well. And that's when obviously the 20K month happened and that kind of thing. But it was shocking at the same time because, I do remember saying, no, let's just sustain it now. Let's just kind of keep things steady. But I always wanted to beat the previous month. So there we go.
But I always say that's like such a strong trait of like a business owner. If you can make things happen, like even like it's different for different business owners, but in your position it was, I don't actually have a huge amount of time, but I also want to continue to beat each and every month.
Yeah.
How can I do that? Like what's like low hanging fruit that I can go to?
Yes.
Is it current clients that I put an offer together? Is there 1 or 2 ex-clients I can get onto? Is there 1 or 2 referrals that we can kind of like leverage?
Yeah.
And I think that's like a really powerful position to be in, whether that's the position you're in, or in another case of another business owner where maybe it's just a bit of a slower month and they have a week left in the month and they're like, okay, how can I turn on like a different hat in my brain and just kind of like get after things that maybe I wouldn't day to day. And I think that can be really powerful.
I think that's a massive, massive thing that you taught me. It's like, it's not just about the new people coming in. You know, if I look at this month alone, you know, we've got maybe 3 or 4 renewing who I've, you know, tailored offers to depending on, you know, the client and where they're at on the journey and that kind of thing. And that's huge. That can be the difference, you know, between you know, beating your previous month and not. So, you know, referrals as well. That's a big thing that, you know, we've been pushing, which has worked really, really well. So, yeah, I think the presumption, like everyone presumes that it's just, you know, you got to bring new clients in. But I think a blend of everything is where you get the really good months. Yeah.
100%. And I think like this is where like coaching and sales actually makes you a better coach. So like when you started with me, just everything you said on the coaching service in terms of how much you care about results, everything is the exact same now. What I helped you do from, let's say, a mindset perspective or a strategy perspective is like, okay, how can we, 1, value you more and the service more? 2, how can we help individuals who without you actually wouldn't make a change? So that actually need to be empowered to like make a decision. And then 3, I'm sure before you definitely, with my fitness business, before I started doing like upsells and stuff, there would be clients who would leave, and they would leave because not the service wasn't good or they weren't happy, they were delighted, but they didn't see the bigger picture of where they could go in the future. So like you getting good at upsells is like, hey, I give an amazing service, I get someone an amazing result. How can I then future pace with them to 100%. A new chapter, get them to see a bigger picture? So yes, you're selling to them because you're getting them to extend their paying you again. But from a coaching perspective, you're helping them not just stop there, see the bigger picture and keep going.
The road mapping has been huge. Yeah, that's been really successful. And I think that's probably been the reason why a lot of our clients have renewed. Like, you know, we've had a lot that have renewed for another 12 months, which is amazing, really, if you think about it, you know, another 12 months. And I think, you know, getting clients to understand that there is no end. And I think what we talk about within Body by Bell a lot, you know, myself and Francesca and now Sophia as well, is like there is no end to what your potential is. And getting, you know, our girls to feel really, really confident and really believe that they can, you know, achieve anything they want to. And I think with the roadmaps, that really helps because they can see the vision. Whereas you're right, you know, someone's just on a rolling monthly and, you know, they're just doing the same stuff over and over again and they don't really understand where they want to get to. I think that's when you probably will suffer from, you know, maybe poor retention. Maybe it's not your service. Maybe it's just the fact that the client doesn't believe that they can actually achieve, you know, what they can achieve.
100%. And even I remember with my fitness business, when we were doing 6-month paid in fulls, and I was just seeing a trend, like maybe like 5 months in, they were checking consistently for 5 months, and then they just kind of like stopped checking in. And basically what was in their head more than likely in most cases was, oh, I paid for 6 months, 6 months is nearly up, I've kind of given up just beforehand. So what we started doing was like, okay, when motivation's still higher, let's say it's month 4, get them on a call, future pace, not just for the next 2 months that they have left. What about the next 6 months, the next 12 months? Now all of a sudden they're excited, they're seeing a bigger picture and they want to stay with you more long term. So you being a better coach is the person who can do that and actually sell them that instead of just saying like, oh yeah, like let's leave them go because I'm afraid to sell or it doesn't feel right to offer something to my clients.
And I remember one thing that you taught me is like, you know, if you don't ask, you don't get. And I think sometimes you can presume when it comes to clients, you know, maybe they are slowing down a little bit or, you know, maybe they feel a little bit less engaged, but it's amazing what a catch-up call can do. You know what I mean? And some of our clients who, if I'm honest, I didn't expect them to renew. As soon as you get that roadmap call in, and as soon as you kind of show them the vision, you know, they suddenly they're like reinvested in the process. And I think that's what keeps it exciting from their end as well. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so just to kind of recap your journey. So we started like 2.5K per month, scale to over hitting 20K per month now. I know there's been a lot of lessons, but if there's someone listening who is maybe under 10K a month in a position where they think they're trying a lot, they want to be doing more and they want to kind of push their business to what you've been doing, like 20 plus K per month. Is there any like main lesson, whether it's mindset, whether it's strategy, just anything that kind of comes to mind as probably one of the biggest things for you?
I think there's 2 things that kind of springs to mind. The first thing is like, you've got to invest in yourself and your business. You know, I understand that, you know, investing in a mentor is an expense. I get that. But I reflect on, you know, last April, if I hadn't, you know, pulled the trigger and come to you, I'd still be working in a corporate job, 9 to 5. I'd still,
goosebumps.
yeah, I'd still, you know, I wouldn't be here in Dubai. I'd probably be, you know, sat at my desk or in a meeting. And I think, you know, so for me, that genuinely changed my entire life. And I think it's all well and good thinking that you can do it by yourself, but actually, I know full well that I could not have done it by myself. I didn't have the knowledge. I didn't have the experience. I knew I was a good coach, but that's about it.
Yeah.
There's loads of good coaches out there.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, at the end of the day, you know, it's not just about coaching. If you want to build a business, it's about building a business. And there's a lot, you know, there's a lot more to it than I think people realise. So I think firstly, back yourself, trust yourself, and invest, because it's going to pay off if, you know, you invest in the right person like you. I think the second thing is, you know, resilience. Like you've got to really, really work on your mindset and understand that this game is hard and you're going to get constant knockbacks, but you're also going to get constant success stories as well. So you've got to take the good with the bad, you know. I think I can only imagine if someone is maybe less resilient or, you know, maybe is in a bad headspace, you know, getting those no's on the calls and, you know, then going into the next sales call with, you know, a poor mindset, it's going to impact your entire business. So I think working on your mindset and resilience is so important for like longevity. You know, it's not, I don't, for me, it was never about just being a coach. It was about building a business. And, you know, with that comes a lot of challenges. So you've got to have thick skin and be resilient.
Yeah. I think as well, like obviously fit us, like me starting as a fitness coach, everyone listening probably being fitness coaches, like we have an air of competitiveness about us, whether that's in the gym, how we see physique development, running performance, whatever it may be. And when we get set with challenges in that area, we're just like, okay, like this is, okay, I've noticed my strength's gone down in the gym. Like, what do I have to do about it? I'll make this change. I'll make that change. When we get the same challenges in business, people seem to deepen it on a level where they think of it's more of like a personal thing about them, or like, this is like, oh God, is this who I am? Like the self-doubt really creeps in. But like I always say, like see business as a game, just like you would like your fitness journey. Yeah. And okay, it's a month and your closing rate is lower. Instead of being like, oh my God, I'm really bad at sales, this is going to be such a bad month, it's going to be such a bad year. But like, okay, I'm getting a challenge that the leads currently coming on the calls are harder to close. How can I solve this problem within my mindset, with my skill set, and just work on it and like actually see it as almost a bit more competitive and fun instead of, oh God, this is my life, this is reality.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, 100%. Like that's another huge thing that you've taught me. It's like, I think the things that can feel like the worst thing in the world at the time, they often end up being something that really changes your business for the better. Like I've been through loads of, you know, bad weeks or bad calls or, you know, bad client experiences where you're just like, oh my God, like, but actually I think rather than blaming, you know, other people or, you know, it's classic, like, oh, this person didn't go ahead, like, you know, taking it out on them, like, what can you learn, you know, from the situation? What can you take away from it? And I think the one thing that has been important to me is like, if I've ever had like a no on a call, or if, you know, something hasn't gone quite right, just, you know, brush yourself off and like learn from it. And then, you know, whatever happened on that call, learn from it and take it to the next call and, you know, nail it. And I think talking through these issues with you and talking through these problems with you as well has massively kind of helped that learning curve as well. So, yeah. Yeah.
And I think on a bigger level, like a frame I always used to love is like if I'm going through a bad time or like something isn't going my way, always try almost have like that redemption like arc in me where like how good a story like this will tell in the future. Yeah. I even take it back to like my competing days. Remember first year I competed, didn't place. Second, and like I remember going home like to the hotel, I was like gutted, like crying, like
competing's awful.
So bad. The next year came fourth, again really, really upset. Yeah. And then the next year got first and won the overall. And me having those 2 years of like upset made the success story
Feels
so much
better.
better.
Yeah.
So much better.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is actually way more inspiring for people to listen to.
Yeah.
Because if I just like, oh yeah, I competed, won my first show, won the next year, people will be like, cool, you must be good, but
Yeah.
don't really, like, that's boring.
But what? Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
boring. When you kind of have a bit of like character building, and when you've kind of gone through something where people can resonate with it, can be inspiring. So anyone who may be going through a bit of business or life friction or anything that isn't going their way, instead of like kind of going into that victim mentality, say like, okay, how, if in 1 year's time, 2 years time, I'm telling a story, how good is it going to be when I've overcome
100%.
this?
Yeah, 100%. I think like I always like to think of it as if it's never going to last. Like, you know, that the pain that you're going through, or like, you know, I had a really bad week like 2 weeks ago. I was like, nothing's moving. Like, no one wants to come. Like, you know, it was just one of those weeks. But I think like I've been through enough to know that those feelings never last.
Yeah.
So, and like you said as well, nothing, you know, if I was always this way and I always had, you know, 25K a month in a business, it would feel like nothing.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It wouldn't feel half as good as it feels now to know that you've built it.
Yeah.
You've been through really tough times. You know, you've had to overcome a lot. Like, it feels so much better knowing that you've been through all of that and you've got to this place. So yeah 100% agree.
Okay, so getting to 20K months, we soon realized we had a new constraint. Well, actually, probably a bit prior to that, in terms of you can't coach all the clients.
Yeah.
So we're now in a position sitting today where you have 2 coaches on the team working under you. So can I ask you what's maybe been the most challenging thing for you to adapt to, going from like solo entrepreneur to having a team?
I think a lot of people say the same, but the control, like, you know, like I think when you are coaching all the clients, it's easy because you're in control. You know what you're doing. You know how you want them to be coached because you are the brand, you know.
Yeah.
So Body by Bell, there's specific methods, there's specific ways I like to do things, and that's the way that I've always done it. That's important that we keep that, because that is what Body by Bell is. But at the same time, you know, we realised there was no way that I could do it on my own. So I think putting trust in other people when this is like your life and soul is extremely difficult. But I also think that I've learned a lot from the coaches as well, and they offer, you know, a brand new perspective and a new dynamic that I couldn't do on my own. You know, we've got Fran, who has done High-Rocks competitions. She's a great in-person PT as well. She's really, really upbeat, alive, like, you know, really dynamic. And, you know, she's got great relationships with the clients. So that's great. And then we've got Sophia, who is our newest member of the team. She's also a yoga instructor, a somatic therapist, and she's got a really holistic approach, something that I don't have, you know. So I think bringing in new coaches, as hard as it can be to, you know, trust people. Firstly, you've got to trust people, otherwise you're not going to grow your business. It's as simple as that. And secondly, they're going to offer a new dynamic. But what I would say is, it's your responsibility as the business owner. Like, at the end of the day, if you've got something that's not happening the way that you want it to, or that's not on them, you know, they're coming into your brand. You know, I think the lessons that I've learned is, you know, if you want something doing a certain way, or, you know, you're maybe not quite happy with something, then it's on you to fix that in the right way. Do you know what I mean? Rather than kind of blaming other people for maybe a mistake or something. Yeah,
100%. And obviously, I know you would have been careful in terms of your selection for the coaches to be a right fit for the brand, but was there any, I'd say maybe coaches listening would be like, not just in terms of service, but even like the culture of like your business, like was there anything specific, one, you looked out for in terms, or like two, when they came on board, that you did to ensure that they'd kind of like meet the right culture for your clients, for the business as a whole? Was there anything?
Yeah, so it was hard. It was hard to find the right coaches. I think the one thing, and you know, you've got so many different coaching brands with so many different like USPs, and I think ours was always our relationships with the clients. Like, we are we are friends. Like, and I know that's not a lot of coaches' vibes, but that's our vibe, you know, like it's that close relationship. It's that trusting relationship. You know, all of our clients are so honest with us just because we're so open ourselves. And that was something that was really important to me. Like, I know all of our clients, and I know you're like, you can't do that forever. And I'm like, well, let me try for a little while. So like, I think the relationship building was number one, because other coaching principles can be taught. You know, the way that you coach clients, it's not rocket science, you know what I mean? Like, it really isn't. But the relationship that our coaches have with our clients was always my number one priority, because for me, that's how we always get the results. It's like breaking people down, getting them to be able to really reflect on themselves, having that solid relationship where they can look internally. And not everyone can do that. Not everyone has the personality to do that. So that was kind of my number one when hiring Fran and Sophia. That was kind of at the top, because I knew I could teach everything else. So
Yeah, I love that. Something else I love that you touched on, which I think can probably help a lot of coaches, and maybe where people could go wrong, is they'll hire someone who kind of has all the same strengths they have, but isn't as good a version.
Yeah.
So then it kind of comes into that point of like, I feel like if I give a client to that individual, they're going to get like a worse experience.
Yeah.
Whereas from your perspective, like you said, your coaches working under your brand have different strengths that you don't necessarily have. So you're speaking to someone on a sales call and you're like, okay, my coach is like the perfect individual for you. And like, you can say that with actual meaning and truth behind it.
100%. Like, I think I wouldn't have hired Fran and Sophia unless they were amazing. So, and secondly, like, they are just as, for me personally, there is no kind of hierarchy at Body by Bell. We all have a level playing field when it comes to coaching the clients. And what I mean by that is, like, we're all, as coaches, we're all responsive in the chat for different things, you know. The clients that I personally coach and do the check-ins for will still receive answers from like Fran and Sophia on certain things as well. So we've got that dynamic, and the biggest selling point as well is you've got 3 coaches rather than just one. So you're always going to get a quicker answer. You know, you're always going to have different perspectives. You know, we share ideas on calls as well, you know, to make us better and quicker. So yeah, I definitely think that I know for a fact our clients are getting just as good, if not better. Do you know what I mean? I've got all the other stuff to do. So I think I've got massive confidence in that, knowing that a client will come on board and get an amazing service regardless of who they're coached by. So yeah,
100%. Okay, so I don't know if this is something you struggle with. Probably not, because I know you're a high achiever. But sometimes when we achieve a lot of success in the short term, it can be hard then to look, or maybe kind of set goals for you into the future, because you almost have to get your mind up to like this new level you're operating on, which only a few months ago didn't even seem possible. But if I was to say to you, we're sitting down the same place like 12 months in the future having a conversation, what would success look like to you when you're maybe talking about the business, kind of like your personal life, what your kind of like day to day looks like? Is there anything specific that's that like next milestone for you?
Yeah, this is something that you've kind of forced me to do, because I've obviously lived a lot in the moment over the last few months, and I think that's been important because it has been a really, really busy few months. And my last day in the corporate world was only November, literally like weeks ago. So there's been a lot of adapting since then. I can't say I'm any less busy, if I'm honest. I've just like created loads of stuff for myself to do. But I think for the future, like, the number one priority for me is like the brand to become bigger and better. You know, the vision is to have different dynamics to the business as well. You know, I'm really passionate about functional training. Love the holistic approach that we're now bringing in with Sophia. Obviously, body composition will always be kind of the number one, but like, I want the brand to be have multiple avenues for clients. And I think that's really important as well, because clients will get bored, and creating fresh and new and exciting things for them. That's the whole reason I did a High Rocks competition. It was awful, but it also gives me like another avenue to push that I couldn't push before. So I think that, obviously, I think financially, I'm going after the big months. There's no doubt about it. Like, you know, yes, I'm competitive, but also I won't sit here and lie and say that I don't care about making loads of money, because I do. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, I wouldn't have been able to come to Dubai and, you know, live this amazing life for a few days.
Travel business.
Yeah, shut up. So all of these amazing things, but I think also, you know, being able to bring family into it in the future as well is important to me. And actually, you know, building a larger business in the long term is exactly what I'm going for. So yeah, I love that.
I think just what you said on kind of like client, like having more strings for clients, something, and we may speak about it later. It's like almost seeing a client future pacing where a client could be, and almost having a service. So as if most people who come to you are people who want to lose weight, unconfident, just want to gain confidence in the gym. And you're like, yeah, for most people, we can do that in 6 months to actually sustain it long term.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, in 6 months' time, what's going to be the new thing that they feel? Maybe they're not feeling as enjoyable about the gym anymore. And maybe it's like, oh, is like high rocks training something to do? So we can keep you in the shape where you have your confidence. But now we're kind of getting into something which is a bit more performance based.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you can, so even like, let's say me with the mentoring, if I had something in my service where I was like, okay, I'm going to get Annabelle so busy that she says to me, I can't do as many sales calls as that are being booked. And I was like, oh, I have closers that I can give you. It's X amount. They'll come in fully trained, working for your business. And that's me being clever of like, I have a back end offer that eventually you'll need based on the growth we're going at. So exact same for you with fitness.
Yeah, I think you've got to keep with the trends as well. Like, you know, High Rocks is hot at the moment. And it's an amazing experience as well. So I'm not surprised. But I think people will naturally always go through different phases where they care about different things. So it's important as a coaching brand that we match that. You know, I've been through it myself. Like, I've only kind of just jumped back onto the bodybuilding kind of style of training because I spent a year doing like CrossFit and more functional training. And that's because I was bored of like just focusing on how I looked. You know, I wanted to perform at a better level and I wanted to push myself in that area. Now I'm back to the point where, you know, I want to be leaner again, and that's okay. Now I'm on that journey again. So I think if we can match that as a business, and we've got a few, I'd probably say we've got maybe 10 plus clients now who are looking to compete in a High Rocks next year. So we're programming in that way, but they came as fat loss clients, you know, and now we're exploring a whole different avenue with them. So I definitely think being able to offer different things is important. Being kind of too closed, I think maybe just obviously just it limits you, doesn't it? So yeah.
100%. And that's, I think, sometimes the difference of just some people say like niche down really hard on one specific thing. But I think there's a lot of value in not feeling like you have to niche too hard and having individuals come in on like different paths.
Yeah, for sure. But I do understand that. Do you know what I mean? Like, especially like the bodybuilding coaches, that's them through and through, 100%. As if they would ever, you know, coach a High Rocks competitor. That's not going to happen. But for me, especially coaching the general population, women change their mind like you wouldn't know what. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's important to match that when you're looking at kind of the general population.
I suppose that goes back to authenticity in you, because you're like, that's something I've done. I've jumped from CrossFit to High Rocks to bodybuilding. So if I'm helping people do the same thing, and
I do get bored, and I know women get bored. So yeah,
100%. Okay, so for part 2 of the video, we'll be kind of like discussing kind of with the growth that you've had so far. Obviously, getting to 20k a month, 2 coaches, we can make it sound amazing, but that comes with sometimes more stress, more overwhelm for you in terms of future pacing. So we'll be kind of sitting down to talk about kind of like the biggest constraint right now and the strategy to push to 30, 40, 50, 50k.
Amazing.